Hey everyone, welcome to Judging for the Win. I'm Dave, and this is my daily ruling. Today's question was suggested by a viewer. Thanks to Zergog for this one. Amy plays an Invigorating Surge, targeting her grizzly bears while she controls Hardened scales. How many counters in total are placed on Amy's grizzly bears? Alright, so the first thing that I want to point out about this question is that if you take a look at Invigorating Surge, you can see that it indicates that you're putting those +1/+1 counters on the grizzly bears in two separate events. You can tell because it uses the word then, indicating that these are two events that happen in a sequence. Now, that's super important for the answer to this question because of the way replacement effects work. Basically, anytime something happens in the game that matches the thing the replacement effects look for, then the replacement effect is going to butt in, and it's going to replace that event happening with a completely different event. Because the Hardened scales sees two separate instances of +1/+1 counters being put onto the grizzly bears, that means that it's going to apply to each instance of +1/+1 counters being put on there. So it's going to interact with both parts of the Invigorating Surge's resolution. Let's take a look at how that would happen. So first, we're going to put one +1/+1 counter on the grizzly bears, which the Hardened scales is going to see and interact with that, and it's going to make that one counter turn into two counters. Afterwards, we're going to double the number of counters that are on the grizzly bears, and that means we're going to be putting two additional +1/+1 counters on that grizzly bears. That means that the Hardened scales is going to see that also, and it's going to increase that number to 3. So we're putting 2 counters and then 3 counters for a total of 5 +1/+1 counters. Pretty awesome deal. But hold on a second. If you call right now, we'll double the offer. That's right. Let's take a look at what would happen if we had this exact same play happening, but Amy also controls a doubling season in addition to the Hardened scales. Okay, so we're going to have this work out pretty similar to what we saw last time. The doubling season also has a replacement effect, and that replacement effect also looks for any time +1/+1 counters would be put onto the grizzly bears. And so that means the doubling season is also going to interact with both times that the Invigorating Surge puts counters onto the grizzly bears. The only other thing that's kind of different is the fact that since doubling season is also a replacement effect, we can't have two replacement effects apply to the same event at the same exact time. It's not even really clear how that would try to happen if we wanted to do that in this case. So what actually happens in cases like these is Amy, the person who controls the grizzly bears that these counters are getting put onto, is going to choose what order those replacement effects apply. And so let's take another look at how this event would go down if we had both these enchantments in play. So first of all, we're going to put one counter on the grizzly bears, and both of the replacement effects are going to try to interact with that. If we applied doubling season first, then we would double that one counter to 2 counters, and then Hardened scales would increase that to 3 counters. On the other hand, if we apply the Hardened scales first, then our 1 counter is going to get increased to 2 counters, and then the 2 counters is going to get doubled into 4 counters. So taking for granted that Amy wants to put the most number of counters possible onto her creature, we'll say that she chose to do this. So now for the second step of Invigorating Surge's resolution, we have 4 counters on the grizzly bears, which means when we double that number, we're going to put 4 additional counters on. And so we have that exact same dynamic as what we saw the previous time, where if we apply the Hardened scales after the doubling season, then we kind of short ourselves a counter. So we're going to take the 4 counters that we're putting on and increase that with Hardened scales first into 5, and then we'll double that with the doubling season into 10. And so we can see that Amy can get up to 14 +1/+1 counters on her creature from just this one spell. I'll leave it as an exercise to my viewers to put down in the comments all the other possible numbers of +1/+1 counters that Amy could legally get based on changing her decisions about what order she applies the replacement effects in. But that's all I have for you today. How did you do? Join me again next time for another daily ruling, but until then, I hope you have a great day.